November, so this is the 11th edition. So thanks, committed SPE members and also some of you who are not SPE members for staying with us, and we hope that it has been helpful. You've had taken some key learnings that you've been able to implement at work or in your research or in whatever you do. So today promises to be another interesting conversation. WRFM is something that is very important in the oil and gas industry, especially in Nigeria. We have a lot of brown fields, and as we say, we are sweating the assets. So it's a timely presentation. So welcome again. We also have the privilege of having speakers and moderators who have graciously accepted to serve in this capacity in spite of their busy schedules, in spite of different time zones. Anekan is in a different time zone, but he's here with us. So we really do appreciate that. Okay, so we'll just run through the agenda for today. As you can see, we'll take the national anthem and then we'll take a safety moment. The section chair, Xavier Pedro, he's in the call, will give a welcome address, and I will introduce the moderator and we'll proceed to the presentation proper. We'll spend some time there hoping that it will be interactive, engaging, and we take some Q&A and we wrap up. So we just start with the national anthem.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians old and proud to serve our sovereign motherland. Our flag shall be a symbol that truth and justice reign. In peace or battle honored, and this we count as gain. To hang on to our children a banner without stain. O God of all creation, grant this our one request. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed, and so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And again, may Nigeria be blessed and may we all be blessed. Okay, so we'll proceed to the rest of the program. But before we take this safety moment, let me just take the time to properly recognize our section director who is here. Hopefully we'll have others joining, Mr. Erasmus Nana, and also our section chair, Sir Abie Pedro. So thanks for joining. And as we have others coming, we'll also give them their due recognition. So over to you, Kalu, for a safety moment.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ella, for the warm welcome. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Simeon, please, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Welcome again to everyone to this monthly technical meeting. As energy professionals, safety is in the forefront of all our activities, and continuing in that light, I'll be sharing a brief story that we could take some learning points from and integrate in our various workplaces to ensure that our safety is kept at the forefront. So I'll be discussing briefly on an incident that happened on site. A worker tripped over a poorly organized cables, and this resulted to an injury. So in response to that, an investigation was made to point out key causes of the fall and also to identify other key risk factors that could cause slips, trips, and falls while on site. And it was pointed out that the slip could have been caused by cluttered work areas. It could also be caused by the staff wearing an improper footwear or environmental hazards poor and such as spills and poor lighting. Also, from the investigation, it was also pointed out that the incidents could also be caused as a result of lack of training on fall prevention and improper use of ladders. After the investigation, some best preventive practices were put in place in order to put proactive steps to ensure no slip or trip or fall happens again while on site. And proper housekeeping was one of the first things that were put in place to ensure that the work areas are properly kept and the cables are managed properly and spills are cleaned to ensure that there isn't any slip again. Also, there are also steps to put to ensure the right footwear to ensure that every staff on site puts on the right footwear to ensure that the incident doesn't happen again. Also, there were also efforts put in place to ensure ladder safety, to inspect all ladders that were used on site, and also to also push forward the 3 points of contact rule, which is that anyone that is on the ladder should ensure that there are at least 3 parts of the body on the ladder, either 2 arms and a feet, or 2 foot and an arm. Also, there were also 4 protection measures put in place, such as harnesses, guardrails, and also all the equipment were properly inspected. Also, there were also efforts put to ensure that the lightning on site were okay, and also all hazards were marked. So slips, trips, and falls are preventable through proactive housekeeping, proper training, and hazard awareness as to ensure every worker's safety, as to maintain operational safety. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carlo, for that very insightful safety moment. So indeed, slip, trips, and falls. I mean, some of it it may sound very light, but some of these incidences have led to injuries that are life-threatening, and some lead to injuries that people are impaired for the rest of their lives. So thanks for sharing. We cannot overlook some of these things that look like they are quite easy. Please, as we share this safety moments, if you have any addition or any comment, please put it in the chat box. Though we're managing time, but it's also good that we're able to learn from each other. So thanks again, Carlo, for sharing that very important safety moment. Okay, so we'll move over to a welcome address by the section chairperson, Sir Abiye Pedro. Sabi, if you can hear us, please can you unmute?
Yes, good evening, everyone. First, I want to say thank you and good evening to everyone. Thanks for coming for this monthly technical meeting. I was looking forward to it, and I'm sure a lot of us are here because in the Niger Delta, even if we have unopened reservoirs, we have lots of brownfield. And if there is any experience from one person, the other party will want to have it. So first, Aniek Khan Obot, I say thank you for taking the opportunity to want to share, excuse me, your experience with us. We are open to others who want to do it. And I want to say, please, you are all encouraged to ask questions. Good evening, and let's have our time with Anyekan Obot.
Thank you, SC, for that welcome address. Okay, so we'll move forward and we'll be going straight into the meat of today. And I'll do the honors of introducing our distinguished moderator, Mr. Ebuka Afuama, who is the lead petroleum engineer for Heritage Energy. Ebuka is a petroleum engineer and seasoned WRFM expert with Heritage Energy, operator of OML 30, with a decade of experience working with various E&P firms and service providers. He has built competencies in reservoir engineering, integrated production system modeling, production system optimization, business planning, data science applications, and WRFM analytics. He previously drove the product development arm of Cypher Crescent to deploy innovative and groundbreaking WRFM system surveillance solutions to multiple operators as the E&P services and digitalization lead. Ebuka has led a team of engineers, geoscientists, and data scientists in several asset management process digitalization projects across various OMLs, both mature and green assets in Nigeria, with a focus on WRFM process institutionalization, asset data democratization, and exception-based surveillance system setup. He has also driven several FDP studies, PSO projects, reservoir surveillance campaigns, and asset development stroke management plan designs. Ebuka has keen interest in leveraging digital technologies to enhance WRFM activities and has contributed immensely to the success recorded in several WRFM projects in Nigeria. He holds a bachelor's degree from the Federal University of Technology, Owerri. Please, can we give him a virtual round of applause as he takes over the microphone and to go ahead with the monthly technical meeting. Thank you, Ebuka, for accepting our invitation.
All right, thank you so much, Ella, and a very good evening, good afternoon, and also good morning, because I recognize that not all of us are connected from Nigeria. So good evening, good afternoon, and good morning from wherever you're connected to. You're welcome to this month's monthly technical meeting. I'm particularly excited about this month's topic, because I think from what the section chair mentioned, our production from Niger Delta is majorly, made up coming from brownfield assets, and it would be good to hear, and also get learnings from, a seasoned industry expert, who will be sharing experiences on how we can increase production or optimize production from these brownfields. First by discussing some of the challenges, so that at least we're all aware of what the challenges are operating brownfields in Niger Delta, and also what the opportunities are, for us to improve and increase our production from these brownfields. Before we go into the presentation, I wanted to go to some bit of a process check. So the presentation will be likely be for approximately 30 minutes, and after which we'll go into the Q&A section. But during the course of the presentation, if you have any question, please make use of the chat channel. We'll be monitoring the chat channel. So just drop your question. If possible, you can even refer to the slide number, if you have that information, so that during the Q&A section, we will go through that. Okay, so to deliver this quality presentation, and share experiences, is no other than a seasoned industry expert, and that is Mr. Anyekan Obot, a senior production technologist with Brunei Shell Petroleum. Mr. Anyekan is an experienced oil and gas professional with over 15 years of experience managing onshore and shallow offshore fields across Niger Delta, North Sea, and Southeast Asia. Specializes in well reservoir facility management, well integrity management, integrated production system modeling, opportunity maturation, and business transformation. Anieka has delivered numerous integrated WFM projects, including leading production optimization and simplification initiatives that have significantly enhanced profitability. Key accomplishments include driving field reentry plans, brownfield rejuvenation efforts, and implementing innovative solutions within the Niger Delta. Having worked in Shell UK Limited, with international assignments, he immersed himself in HPHT WRFM, well development, subsea abandonment, and decommissioning the matured North Sea assets. Recently, Anieka led the WRFM Refresh project in SPDC in 2023, together with the WRFM Natural team, developing a strategic plan to deliver sustained value over a 3 to 5 years horizon. In addition to his technical expertise, Anieka has authored 3 SPE papers on topic, including WRFM, H2S management, and produced water injection, contributing valuable insights to the industry. Currently, Anieka leads a WFM Natural team, NT3, of over 12 engineers for one of the largest offshore assets in Southeast Asia, focused on maintaining IPSC, strengthening day-to-day production system optimization, maintaining reservoir operating envelope, and well integrity in matured water flood field with ESP and gas lift systems to maximize hydrocarbon recovery and generate significant cash for the business. And from this, you can see that Anieka is more than suitable, to deliver justice to this topic, with a broad range of experience, both locally and internationally. So at this point, I'll hand over to Mr. Anieka, to deliver very good justice to this topic, and with a warm or a virtual round of applause, I'll hand over to you, Anieka. Thank you so much, and over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Ebuka, Mr. Ebuka. I think thanks for that citation, and thanks to everyone for joining the call. My name is Anieka, and I'll try and run through this very quickly. I'm happy at least the presentation is up. I think there are a few updates that we made to the presentation after this was sent out, but I'll try and just voice over some of those changes so I don't have to waste so much time. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining from. I'm really excited to share on this topic. For me, WFM sits at the heart of our operational excellence, sits at the heart of the oil and gas industry. And for us, particularly in the Niger Delta, it sits right there, because obviously you see, compared to the huge investments that you have in terms of infield developments and drilling new wells, you see that WFM actually delivers a lot more value, to the business, especially when you're in the brownfield space. So for me, WFM is not just a process, but it's a dynamic philosophy that integrates people, technology, data to maximize production performance. And if you're effectively managing these reservoirs and wells, you'll be able to unlock untapped potential, mitigate risk, and ultimately drive efficiency. I think that's the key message that we're going to take out from this, right? So in this presentation, we'll try and explore some of the WFM principles that we apply to optimize production. I'll try and cover a few key strategies that could help us deliver results. Discuss on some of the importance of real-time monitoring. I think that's where we need to get to, leveraging some of the experience I've seen internationally. I think that's the next level to take in the WFM to. And I'll be able to share some case studies, selected case studies that hinge on some of the aspects of optimization that we also see that can play a key role in the Niger Delta as well. So for me, whether you're a production engineer, a data scientist, and young engineer or experienced engineer, I think this whole session aims to showcase the WFM and how that can help transform the landscape, and addressing those challenges and seizing opportunities in this ever-changing environment is very key. So I'll try and run through this very quickly. Already, Ebuka has already done justice to myself. I'm happy to just share a little bit that I was part of that whole journey in Niger Delta, not just long ago, at least 6 months or 7 months thereabouts, that I moved to Brunei to also help provide some technical expertise, to the Brunei Shell Petroleum. So I just go through, through the next agenda. If you go to the next slide, I'll just try and just capture this in a few talking points, and then we can discuss during the Q&A sessions on areas that we want to really go into details on. So I'll try and give you a brief introduction in terms of what I term production optimization in the brownfield and why we need to focus on that. I'll try and provide some introduction, some background, in that context, and then I'll share some of the challenges, not particular to just the Niger Delta, but challenges that cut across managing oil and gas infrastructure and fields. And then I'll share a little bit around what we think is the optimization strategy that you can adopt at every point in time, leveraging some of the theories around continuous improvement workflows. And then I'll share opportunities for optimization, and then some case studies that are applicable in the Niger Delta. And the case studies are real life experiences, real life case studies that we've done across Shell, like already, and because we manage more than over 400 fields in the Niger Delta. So those are some clear examples of what we are doing to optimize production in that space. And I think that will be of great insights to everybody in the call. And then I'll try and just wrap that up, yeah? If you go to the next slide, just to provide some introduction. In terms of brownfield, I think the quick question that comes to mind is, what is a brownfield? And typically, there are a few dotting characteristics of a brownfield that you need to also take into cognizance. And I try to look that up because typically you want to call every field that is matured in a brownfield. But there are clear things that you need to pick out, when you're looking at the brownfield. One of them is that it must be matured. Obviously, you must have had some production over the period. You've gotten data, you understand your reservoirs, you have a little bit of understanding of your well performance, you have a bit of understanding of the limits of your facilities. So indeed, it's a matured field. And even more so to that, because it's matured, you also begin to see some level of decline, declining performance or declining production. I think that's just the general definition of brownfields. So if you look at it in that context, you'll be able to see that, when once you start having decline, you can actually be in the midlife or be in the end life state of the field. That's where you need to actually put on your optimization lever even more. Because at that point, the cost of managing the asset becomes very significant and the margins are very small. And because the margins are small, you need to be able to take advantage of all the low-hanging fruits to make sure you deliver value to the business. So some of the characteristics I've tried to pitch, some of them are around aging facility. For example, you have fields that have been there for more than 20 years. Separators have also been installed at the start of the production life of the field. And some of them, because of age, because of obsolescence, because of all kinds of factors, environmental factors impact on the facility, you begin to see that yes, your aging facility becomes more like a liability at some point, considering the maintenance cycles and all of that. So that's where you need optimization to actually help provide that context. Now, moving to production optimization, I've tried to bring this in the context of activities that you do, small tweaks to your operating envelopes and to your, to your set points to be able to get incremental production gain. And that's by reducing constraints, by eliminating constraints and making sure that you're able to debottleneck the system. What we are trying to focus here is not just looking at the well itself, because obviously as petroleum engineers, we carry away by just going for all those big intervention activities, well intervention that covers sand clean out, perforation and all kinds of interesting things. I don't want to focus on that, but I just want to focus on some of the low hanging fruits, things you could do with minimal cost to actually help you drive production gains. So I'm going to focus on some of those areas, minimal resources required, things you could do that could actually help drive production gain, not just on the high cost interventions, but very low cost interventions that even gives you gains that are higher than doing redevelopment and all of that. Yeah. So for us, our optimization piece is very crucial for the brownfield, and the benefits are enormous in terms of how we improve efficiency, how we can reduce costs, how we can maximize and sweat the asset, how we can improve uptime and build on that, to really know, to really get all the best out of your brownfields. So if we go to the next slide tries to capture some of the challenges, not just peculiar to the Niger Delta, but we're also looking at challenges across oil and gas industry, right? And how you manage your fuels. And some of them are around the reservoir as well that try to put in the different buckets. But I really, want to focus on the fourth option, which is around the challenges around the Niger Delta and how we can really, push through that terrain and just get the best out of it. For the reservoir and the well side, you're already conversant with energy depletion issues, depending on the drive mechanism of the reservoirs. That's also very key. You now need to think about, rock failure leading to sand production in your wells. There's also issues around uneven contact movement on even sweep across the reservoir. Those are things that we also know fully well. There's also a bit around bypass hydrocarbon and all of that. So I think that's about it on the reservoir side. On the well side, you have the integrity issues. For a brownfield, integrity becomes very, very key because, obviously you have things that could be failing in your wells. You have high BS&W issues, some problems, GOR problems, as well, looking at flare limits and trying to make sure you stay within GHG emissions. So those are some of the teething issues around the wells. Liquid loading for gas wells, we've seen that clearly, in some of the gas wells that we're doing. And then we see flow assurance challenges in terms of WACs, asphaltenes, and scales in our wells. On the facility bit, not to bore you, of course, I've mentioned the aging facility bit, reliability index, for some of the facilities that we have, how reliable was the uptime, was the availability of the facility. I think those are some of the things. But more importantly, is also around the back pressure problems that we see in some of our fields. We've bulk production from many wells into a bulk line. How do we optimize? How do we make sure we get the best value, from that? And we see that cut across in some fields where we bulk in production and we just live with what comes from there. Well, I think in the course of this presentation, I'll share some examples on how we can help reduce that bit and make sure we get the best and really go ahead to sweat the assets. Peculiar to the Niger Delta, I try to reward some of these challenges within the Niger Delta just to make sure that we don't stay on the non-technical risks alone. I think one of the things I tried, I brought in, post sharing the slide was around the systems that we have in the Niger Delta, which is far away from real-time monitoring, where you can apply some level of AI supported production optimization skills, to be able to drive efficiency across brownfields. Not also reducing the impact of insecurity, vandalization, sabotage, wellhead theft. I think that's something we see across the Niger Delta that is also coming up strongly. We also see that a lot of the facilities, because of the age of the facility, we are not able to also get the best from them because obviously they are not set up primarily to become smart. In terms of some of the facilities don't have internet and some of the facilities are in very obscure locations in the country and may not be able to benefit from real-time monitoring and automation, really. So I think that's the context around the Niger Delta, just looking at the NTR space and the capabilities that we can quickly adopt, within that space. Then if we move to the next slide, what we tried to do was, to reflect on some of the things we're doing and just to be able to, put a strategy to, put a workflow to it. And like what resonates strongly with all of us is the continuous improvement mindset, and there are a few models to that. I think some of them are very, these are models that we can find in our everyday optimization life or continuous improvement models, right? I think one of them that I took keen interest on was one we call the plan, do, check, and act, right? And then that focuses on how you identify opportunities, how you identify improvement ideas, how do you go through the whole loop of planning for it and trying to do it, checking that what you've actually set out to do achieves the result, and then acting, which means that you try to embed it into your system, you try to roll it out and try to make sure that you can replicate on that optimization initiatives, right? So and then reflecting on that principle, I have to sit back and now say, okay, in approaching optimization opportunities, even where I sit in my team, how do we go about it? And one of them very strongly is knowing your production system. Nothing takes away the fact that you know what you're optimizing. You're able to determine what is providing you, what is giving you the gaps, what are the challenges, what are the constraints, what are the limits to your production system. So the number one thing that you need to do in optimization is to know your production system. If you know your production system, the next step will be to identify the limits. Do you know the limits? Do you know the constraints? What are your hard limits? What are your soft limits? What are limits that you can always walk around? And begin to challenge those limits. Begin to challenge those set points. And I can share some examples, clearly on that, where we've been able to adopt that mindset to challenge some of those set points. And we're able to walk around to reduce the limits and constraints on our facility to be able to get more from the wells. And the last bit is to implement and learn. As you implement the optimization strategies, as you implement the DIY initiatives, you learn from it, you document it for other people that are also managing other assets so that they can always take a cue from what you've done to actually, grow their production. And that's the simple step, the creative step that you can take in actually going about your optimization. There is no rule of thumb that provides you a quick and dirty answer in terms of the production optimization, but you need to go through that cycle to actually identify opportunities for you to push the limits in your assets. In some instances, you're successful to push the limit. In some instances, it also brings up other challenges that you begin to see. So that's why you need to, at every point in time, reflect on the results, learn from it, and try to replicate if it provides you with good results. I think that cycle works almost perfectly all the time if you can just go through it bit by bit. But fundamentally, you need to know your production system and know what you're managing for you to be able to optimize. So if you go to the next slide, so the next slide basically tries to capture some of the tools that you use, and I'm sure industry experts will reckon with some of these tools. And one of them is very prominently is the well operating envelope. Very, very simple diagram that basically captures a limit in just a snapshot. So you can begin to see where your well is producing at and begin to see what's the impact. Where can you optimize? Do you still have room to push your limits? And what are your constraints? So what are your limits? What are your soft and hard limits? So that snapshot basically captures, from the well perspective, where your operating point is and what is your operating window for it to optimize. And it's a very powerful tool. If you're able to create that well operating envelope, based on the well test for your wells and for your field, you're going to be able to deliver value and deliver results in a very short term. The next bit, apart from the wells, moving into the facility space, there are two quick tools that you can use to drive that. One of them is the IPSM model. The IPSM model is a network model. I don't know how many companies or how many companies are, that use the PETEX model, but it's a network model, an integrated model that integrates both your surface and your well and your reservoir. So it's a full view of, what the network is, and you're able to really see what the bottlenecks are in terms of your production. And this is a very fantastic tool. I'm not here to pitch on the tool, but the key message is that you could actually leverage on some of these tools to help in your optimization journey. The other bit is also the limit diagram. The limit diagram is also a very fantastic tool, and we've come to really appreciate the powerful or the insights that we draw from the limit diagram. And I can share some examples on the limit diagram where that has been able to, give us the right value that we see. The limit basically looks at the dynamic constraints on your facility, right? So that you're able to, go ahead and debottleneck, go ahead to optimize, not losing sight of other pending constraints, when you resolve the immediate constraint that you have. And the insights you draw from the limit diagram, are very, very powerful in the sense that you can actually build a limit diagram that speaks to the future, that looks at all your incremental activities that you're going to be doing in the field and what your constraints would be. There are instances where your lines are not able to contain with the rates at which you're producing your wells, and you become constrained. In that case, you can be able to plan ahead. You can be able to forecast how you're going to be able to reduce those limits, debottleneck, decomplexify, and also get the best out of it. There's also insights that you can draw from the limit diagram. I think, working with the limit diagram and not leaving it to be static, there's some insights you can draw from. Because of the dynamic nature of your production system, you have changes in your GOR and changes in your water cut. Obviously, because in matured field, you're already tending towards that space. You need to begin to see the impact of all those changes on your production system. And that's about, knowing that if you have a flare constraint, there's a likelihood that your GOR may be increasing because you're having depletion. That's time you now begin to reflect on that forecasted limit diagram to be able to help you to find ways to optimize, right? If you're having water cut, increasing water cut, there's also a tendency that you could also be constrained by your liquid handling capacity. That becomes a constraint that you need to begin to think about to get the best value. Creaming is a very good opportunity, but for us is to maintain zero deferment, maintain zero locked-in potential for you to get the best value from it. So before you go into creaming, try as much as possible to see how you can remove the limits, remove the constraints. That gives you a better chance instead of shortening wells because they are doing more water or more gas than the other. Overall, you're losing production at the end of the day. So if you go to the next slide, I'm trying to run through this very quickly because of time. The optimization opportunities that exist, and like I said, this is not exhaustive. There are a lot of them, but I just put a few of them. That's something that can be something you can reflect on some of the points and then see how that can really help you to change the narrative. One of them is the one that is very constant in our own space, which is a very simple one: bean up and bean down. You do a well test, you look at the bean setting for your well, you decide to increase the bean, probably look at how that impacts on your overall system in terms of your reservoir and your water movement and all of that. You're able to bean up your wells. That's very easy, quick and dirty. You can go about it. There's also a bit that I'm very strongly passionate about around back pressure reduction. You have a production system, you have multiple wells going into a facility, and maybe because of the aging nature of your facility, you have some vessels, some lines that are completely not usable. You're able to still find a way to optimize your production by using back pressure effects on the line and getting the best value from it. There's a bit I'm going to talk on shortly, which is around the well trip, but I'll have to come back to that because I think that's where we also have a very good area for us to optimize when I look at the Niger Delta. There's also a bit on the gas lift. What I learned while deploying gas lift was that gas lift is very forgiving. So a lot of the times you put in gas, you're going to get something. However, there's always a sweet spot with your gas lift for you to get the best value. And getting that best value means that you need to know how much gas you're putting in and how much gas is delivering value. Because if you look at the gas utilization curve, you're able to see that the more gas you put in the well doesn't mean you get higher production, right? You can actually be putting gas and then that could actually be choking back the well. So it's around how we manage gas measurements, lift gas measurements, and how we can optimize that space. That's a great opportunity for optimization gains. Well kickoff strategies, how we kick off wells. There are wells that are struggling to kick off because of have dead oil column. How do you go about kicking off some of those wells instead of deploying nitrogen lift every time your facility trips and you're not able to bring back that well? That's another very good opportunity for optimization. Gas well management. Obviously, you don't want to flow your wells below your turnover rates, end up liquid loading your wells, and you begin to think of foaming as an option or thinking of other options that can help you get the gas wells back. Choke cleaning is another very interesting area. There's an example I'm going to share on the impact of having restrictions on your line, potentially maybe at the choke or any other point on your flow lines or your bulk lines that you can quickly pick up from your network modeling, and you're able to optimize with very low cost solutions on that. There's also a bit on the well realignment. This was also very, very interesting. Looking at some of the wells that begin to taper down, throughout the well life, there are times where you have a very healthy well and you begin to see that the well begins to lose energy. And you need to find a way to make sure that you're following and tracking that energy, that reservoir energy impact on your well, and begin to realign your wells from maybe HP to the LP space, or even to flow the wells on the test separator. Intermittent production is actually a philosophy of production for wells that that cannot compete with other wells, especially on your low pressure regime. We also have the bulk line realignment, and all of that. Very interesting subject, especially for areas where you have bulk line based production philosophy. Separator set points, that was also a very interesting area. You can actually explore options of actually lowering your separator set pressures, to a regime where you can allow more production to come in. So for example, if you're running your LP on 3 bar, what stops you from going all the way to 2.5 bar? There are instances we've pushed the limits, challenged these limits, and we're able to push it down to around 2 bar. provided you still maintain control over the wells that are coming in and making sure that you're able to, do the separation that is needed. The whole essence of having the separators on the flow station or the processing plant is to help you separate. And if you're able to separate optimally without having any challenges, then good enough. So we begin to push the limits on separator set points, push the limits on some of those limits that we think that we can always play around. If you PSI drop on your facility side could actually enable more wells to flow in your field. And that's a very powerful tool that you want to leverage on. I want to go back to the well trip scenario. In my experience in the Niger Delta, because obviously majority of the fields are not remotely, they don't have remote monitoring capability. And that's an area that I see as a big opportunity in the Niger Delta. And I think that's for future work. I'll just leave it at that. But indeed, to state the problem statement, it's about how wells trip, and wells trip for various reasons. Wells could trip because the control line pressure that is keeping the SSSV open is not at the pressure that keeps it open. So it begins to drift close, and it closes at some point, and your wells trip. Your wells can trip because of anything offset on the facility, anything else. But how do you respond to your well trip is also an opportunity that can actually help to increase the overall production capacity. Wells could trip, and you have personnel go out to the field to actually identify the well. They take a few hours to identify which well is likely the well that has quit, because we don't have the remote monitoring capability. So what can we do to actually help us close the gap between the response time between when a well trips and how we respond and bring it back online? That's an opportunity and a lever that you can also use to optimize your production. If you go to the next slide, I have a few case examples, 4 of them, and then I have one that I'm also pitching. Maybe there are a few interested people that may want to take that on board. I think it is a great opportunity for us to to go build on that and really get production from that space. This is a case study. There's an SP paper that was published. Credit to the team that published this. A few of them may be in the call, OE and the likes. It was a close team. Also, I was part of that paper presentation at the SP. And this was the paper that we tried to, capture the profitability, driving profitability in brownfields by just focusing on how we optimize our well operating envelope. And like I shared earlier, this is a big, very good tool in managing our well performance and our well production. It is not done in isolation. There's a bit of this that goes back into your reservoir modeling space to be able to see the impact of BINOPS and how that affects your overall recovery, because we are looking at also longer term, recovery, from your wells, not just the instantaneous production increase. We're also looking at how does it impact on recovery. So there's a second part to this tool which is very, very good, that you need to cycle back to your reservoir engineer to actually see the impact of that in the overall recovery space. But one thing that is very pertinent is that as you do your well test, you get more insights, you get more information, you're able to plot your well test and begin to see how that is changing over time. I'm going to say, can I push my limit a little bit by just pushing my increasing my bin by 10% or 15%? And that can actually help you gain some production in that space. And this is an example, one of the fields we worked on. We've disguised the name of the field, but just this is real hard data for one of the fields and one of the wells. And in that case, we did maximum efficient rate testing, MER test on some of those wells over 3 production choke, and we're able to plot the performance on this chart, and we're able to see, do we have any opportunity to push the limit? And in this case, we're able to increase the bin a little bit, because we've seen that after doing the MER test and cycling back to the reservoir engineer, we could actually increase the bin from 20 to 24, 30 to 32, right? And we're able to push that optimization through, and we're able to get around 300 barrels, from that optimization alone. This is done regularly, in the Nigerian context. I think by regulation, you're supposed to do MER 2 times in a year. So, but beyond that, we built this in as a way of working in Shell to actually see how can we continuously optimize, so that we are not just waiting 6 months before we look at the well. We continuously look at the well operating envelope, plot the day-to-day well test that we have within the 6-month cycle, and see how that fits into our space. And like clearly, if you look at the chart on the left, the HABGO009T, you see that the envelope, your envelope is big, but the window that we are producing from is quite narrow. And you see that if you continuously move to the right, you're getting more liquid production, right? You're getting more liquid production, and which means you're getting more oil production into your system. The right hand side also shows some picture of a scenario where you don't have opportunities within the bin-off space, but you can actually bin down to actually gain some production. There are some instances where, because of appetite for more, you may have binned up some of the wells and you've done some more tests. And benefit of hindsight, you can actually go back and see if there's any way you've eroded value in any way that you're having less production. You can actually cut that back, and then you can actually get more oil into the well. I think that's something that we've also learned, which is also a learning point as you go through your cycle of optimization. That last point, which is implement and learn. As you implement, you give opportunity for learning, so you can be able to plug back the results back into your back into your optimization cycle to learn from it. I think this was a clear example where we had done the bin ups, we got the instantaneous gain, but it wasn't sustained over a long period, and we had to like, okay, can we go back and then review that, and then we're able to bin back. And over the period, we had what I call drop, which meant that we had some more incremental gain, oil production in that well. So this one very, very easy tool that you can quickly adopt in terms of understanding the well, and then going after the minor opportunities, small opportunities that you can get from here. Cumulatively, this initiative was able to unlock roughly 10 to 12,000 barrels of oil per day in a set of fields over a big asset, and we're able to gain that by just optimizing our set points. The other bit is also the next slide. Thanks for moving the slide. I think that's like, telling me to go to the next one. So this one is also a very good example. As part of our Dobe FM, optimization, some of our wells are dual string completion. And like, there are instances where they have different forecasts. So some zones quit before other zones. And this is a clear example where you have a long string that is draining a deeper zone, just call it zone 2, which is deeper, that is completely depleted. So what we've done is, can we now get to flow zone 1 from the short and the long string concurrently? And that's an opportunity that you can test with your Prosper model by just looking at the diameter of your pipe for your outflow and seeing, is there any benefits in opening the sleeve on the long string and producing the same zone from the short and the long string. And cumulatively, you could get more. Because the reality of oil production, this is even in the oil space, process check 10 minutes to round up, yeah? So this is clearly in the oil space where you have production through 238, 3.5 in some scenarios. And you're also limited by the size of your tubing. And the issue on the tubing size that you're running may have been from a field development plan that estimated that, okay, you don't want to go above a certain rate, right? But as your wells are becoming into that weak region, you want to create less frictional impact and on the wells. You're able to also deploy this as an incremental opportunity. And what we're seeing is that you get something higher. You may not get 2 times of what each string is going to give you, but you're going to get something incremental on top of the base production you're going to get from one of the intervals. So if you go through, I think I have like 5 case studies. I just run through very quickly. Maybe you can have some detailed conversation if there are questions on it. So the next one is also an opportunity that we did. This one was also a classical example, very complex network, because this were fields developed as platforms, and you had bulk lines connecting it to the processing facility, and we had about 7, 8 wells conduits in one platform. We're trying to optimize production across the bulk line, and indeed we found that we had high back pressure on the bulk line, and we had to go into modeling with IPSM, pipe sim, and all of that. We were able to identify where the bottleneck was coming from, and we were able to pick that at the choke. We had a big differential across the choke, and we're trying to figure out, was it about the choke size that we have on the bulk line or not? And we tried to run a few sensitivities on that, and we were able to identify that there's something across that choke that doesn't seem right. And all we did was just to open up the choke internals, and we found some completion elements from the wells that have come up to plug the chokes, and we're able to clean up the chokes, and we're able to get more production. So this is an example of where you understand your production network and begin to see where are your outliers, what is completely out of trend, And having a high DP across your bulk line could actually indicate some form of restriction, which could be either flow assurance issues, or it could be a very simple one like this one where you have have a restriction across the choke, and we're able to optimize this and be able to get all the wells to flow at the optimal rate. This is an example that can actually fit into your space if you have the data and clearly map your network and be able to see where opportunities exist for optimization. The case study 4 that I also shared is also a very, if you go to the next slide, is another optimization opportunity. This one was another classical example. Initial development was that we have a well that we had 2 lines that that links the well to the flow station. Each of those lines was roughly around 8.5 kilometer long, and we were contemplating on replacing 2 of the lines for 4-inch lines, and that would have cost us premium to replace 2 of the lines, for the long and the short string. And what we did here was just, look at the modeling, and we decided to change the production philosophy by just putting a single line from the well to the flow station. And we made that justification, use the IPSM model to justify it. And we were able to bring back the well that was shut in for more than 7 years and, for more than greater than 5 years. For a well that we had to spend so much money to put 2 lines, we decided to put just 1 line. And we were able to save some money, and we were able to still get the production, by just putting that single line and not have any other cost. And we were able to optimize in that space. And eventually, I think we deployed a 6-inch line for that well, and we were able to bring it back to production. Clearly, good opportunity, but you also need to take into cognizance that there could be some deferments if you want to test the wells or if you don't understand the performance. But a lot of the time, you're going to be doing bulk testing. So you may be taking some deferments to do the individual dedicated testing to be able to understand the performance of the well and even determine speed factors for your hydrocarbon allocation. Yeah, so this was also a very, very good example that we've also done, optimization that delivers value at the end of the day. The last one is one I want to, pitch, which is an initiative that I think would benefit a lot of the brownfields or assets in Nigeria. If you go to the next slide. And that's around the response time, which is something I pointed out earlier. There are a few fields, fields that may develop maybe in the recent 90s and maybe 2000s that have some smart well, capability. And this is actually very helpful. And I try to reckon this where I'm working at the moment, learning from here. You see that virtually all the system is automated. You can actually view it on Pi. You can actually view it on your desktop. You can even give instruction. Now we are going away from even understanding trends with human capability, and we are moving to AI at the moment. That's in advanced, scenarios, in at least not outside the Niger Delta, but there are a few fields in the Niger Delta, obviously, where we've done smart well deployment and we are benefiting from it. And indeed, there are levels to all of this, and it's something that we need to reflect on. How quickly do we respond to well trips, and how does that translate to the overall total production? There's some unscheduled deferment that comes because your well trips, and it's about 5 to 10%, right? Because your well trips on the weekend, the guys are, stalled by weather or because of security challenges or because of any operational challenge. They are not able to quickly respond. And even when they respond, they are going all around the well slots, all around the clusters, trying to figure out which well has gone down. And in some instances, their weather could go down for weeks and you won't pick it up because obviously you've not seen a huge drop in your production. Because most of the times your reflection is, today I did 40,000, tomorrow I did 41,000, yesterday I did 40,500. You may not be seeing that a well may have dropped off in that scenario. So what I'm trying to say is there a possibility for us to implement at least pressure or temperature transmitters on the wellhead so that you're able to pick up pressure data, pick up temperature data that can actually help you to, to inform the petroleum engineer in the office or inform the operations folks that this well is down because obviously your pressure is almost at close to pressure for the well. And you can actually set alarms on some of those transmitters to actually prompt you that this well is beginning to close in, or you're having partial flow from the well, or your tuplets is not fully open. Those are some of the insights that we could get by just adopting simple transmitters, on the wells that could help us, get us pressure and temperature data. So that's an area I think we need to explore more. That could actually be a game changer in just managing well trips, and I think there's huge potential in that. So to conclude, I think that's about 10 minutes of my time. In conclusion, I think production optimization is a clear lever. I think we all agree to that. And adopting the right continuous optimization mindset is important in this journey. And for us in the Niger Delta, I think it's a huge opportunity because a lot of our reservoirs are still giving. They're still giving a lot of production, and you see that in when you look at the field performance, you look at the production performance of your fields, they are still giving. So there's a lot more that we can tap from the wells by just increasing our efficiency, driving our optimization, put optimization at the forefront of our day-to-day work, and beginning to see how we can, change the game, right? So for brownfield and late life fields, it's opportunity to extend it even longer and even make it more profitable by spending less, reducing OPEX, and looking for all the low-hanging fruits that you can actually tap into. And then obviously, at the end of the day, we generate cash. We generate cash and reduce OPEX, right? And that's an opportunity for all of us. So I think I want to round up at that, on this point. Happy to take your questions, and I want it to be more of a discussion because, like you know already, it's a learning process. I've shared insights in the Niger Delta. I've tried to tie on some of the easy things that we can pick up from my experience in the UK and even in Brunei. And I think there's a huge potential for all of us in the Niger Delta to actually push the limits of our production for our different companies and different stakeholders. Yep. Thanks. And I hand back to Ebuka.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Mr. Nyekan. I think we deserve a virtual round of applause, for doing justice to this topic. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been a very interesting and educative, 30+ minutes with you, sharing experiences, practical case studies on how we can improve or optimize production from brownfields. Just to do a bit of recap, before we go into the questions and comments in the chat channel. Thank you again, for delivering this topic. I think you started clearly, by firstly in the background, what exactly, are brownfields, and we're referring to mature assets. And even though these assets are mature, you also need the background that these assets are still critical to the production that we have from Niger Delta for a number of companies. Because a lot of the assets that we're dealing with, especially in Niger Delta, are decades old, 40 years, 50 years old. So we're dealing with a lot of mature assets. But that doesn't mean that we will let the assets lie fallow or allow the production to keep declining. We have to keep optimizing production from these assets. And then you went on to, really bring out what exactly is production optimization, especially in the context of today's discussion. And that is focusing on low-hanging fruit. I think that was a key point for me. Low-hanging fruit, not the big interventions, new drills trying to increase production from these assets. But what are those low-cost initiatives, that probably don't even cost up to, tens of thousands of dollars at most, that you can implement, to still increase production from these assets, and then you went on to share, that production optimization generally, if you want to summarize it into one acronym. Thank you for sharing the acronym. It is a KICI. Is that a KICI or KIKI? KICI. And it's all about continuous improvement. So first, know your system. Understand your system very well. Identify the limits and the constraints that you have in your system, either at the well, or at the reservoir or at the facility. And then even though you've identified those limits, challenge those limits. Sometimes those limits are set, years, decades old. Those limits are limits that you can actually push, with small small adjustments. And I think you even share the example, of sometimes even the limit of separator pressure, can even be challenged. We know that we can still optimally separate this crude. Why is the LP still set at, 5 bar? We can actually push the limit to 3 bar and still increase production from this field. And of course, as you implement this, you also come back and learn, do a post review of that implementation. What is the outcome? Did we get the desired outcome from this production optimization initiative? What other initiative, can we also explore, and it becomes a continuous process. You plan, you act, you review, you go back again and you plan. And thank you once again for also sharing some of the tools that we can even use for this production optimization. Already as you were sharing some of those tools, I was already noting down my book, the ones I need to take back to my company to even implement. You shared, well operating envelopes, and how we can use that to also optimize production from assets. You even shared tools like an integrated production system model, which every operator, should have, especially when you're dealing with such mature and aged assets, so that constantly you can compare your performance, to the potential and see how you can always push that your performance to match what the system can actually give to you. And of course, you also shared limit diagrams, and how that can also give us an insight of where we have bottlenecks or constraints along the system. And discussions can actually change from not just looking at the new intervention or new drill to going to remove the constraint that we have along the bulk line, removing the constraint that we have at the facility, removing the constraint that we have at a particular vessel. And that can completely change the game for a particular field. You shared a number of case studies, and particularly for me to, it's the last case study that was a very practical case study. I even saw in the chat channel, a lot of people are also commenting on that case study 5, where we're even introducing something new, which is improving the response time. Just improving the response time for an asset, from 3 days wait time, to a couple of hours. That can change the production for that particular asset. That extra 1,000 barrels per day, for 3 days, 4 days, deferred. That's a lot of revenue that you're actually deferring from these mature assets. So improving the response time, leveraging some of these automated systems, is also another low cost tool, to production optimization that a lot of us can explore. Thank you so much, Mr. Nyekan. Please, another virtual round of applause again to our speaker before we go to the Q&A section. Thank you. All right. So, Mr. Nyekan, there are a couple of questions in the chat channel. So I'll just go through them one by one. And then, although we are also working with time, we have roughly 10 minutes for the Q&A. So the ones that we can take, we'll take them here. Others we can collate and send a response to SP 103, who will then circulate that to the participants. Hope that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That's okay.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just start with the first one. So the first question is referring to the case study 2, and that's for the dual string production.
Yeah.
And the question is, how did you manage SAM production in that particular case study 2? Okay.
Yeah, I can just take that very quickly. If you go back to the diagram, so what you're doing is only optimization on your vertical lift performance. So your sound production is still intact, which is what you had initially when you were producing the well to the short string. So you look at the zones that you have, you may have deployed IGP, but the diagram shows maybe it wasn't treated at that point, right? So you have maybe untreated sand, maybe based on the prediction for the sand failure, it's established that you don't have sand problems, and you may not have sand problems in the future. But indeed, in this case study, what we're trying to demonstrate here is that you can actually limit, push the boundaries of your vertical lift by just opening flow from the 2 strings. But if you're looking at sand production as an area of interest, assuming you have sand issues, there are a couple of technology you can deploy to manage sand across that zone. Obviously, there's a chemical solution, there's also a mechanical solution that you want to adopt. But in this case study, what we are trying to emphasize is that you can actually open the zone on the long string and be able to tap on the, from the 2 strings flow from zone 1, right? If vertical lift is a challenge, and you can get an additional production by just opening that sleeve, especially when the long string is lying fallow and is a closing well or closing string that you're not using. So that's the emphasis around this optimization for case study 2. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Niekan. Okay, so moving on to the next question. So this is on the limit diagram. So with the understanding that limits are set to ensure asset longevity and get the best out of them, is there a risk versus reward analysis done before limits are challenged? So before you go ahead and challenge limits, risk versus reward.
Yeah. Yeah. So like already, if you do nothing, you get nothing, right? But if you challenge, people begin to reflect and think of what is the reason behind the limits in the first place. Like you said, is to manage your system, make sure you have, all those fancy things, but there's always an opportunity to push the limits. And if you're going through, there are some instances you're being in the offshore environment where the margins are quite narrow in terms of the safety, safety performance. You don't want to make anything trip on the facility and all of that. There's a process of an MOC, which is management of change, right? But you won't sit back and not challenge because you're worried about how it's going to go. But you challenge it, people begin to think, okay, what's the mitigation to what we are trying to safeguard in the first place? And from my experience, I see that there's opportunities to always push that limit. There are classical examples where we push limits on the separators. We're around 3 bar on the LP. We push the limits. We're around even at 1.8 bar on the LP. And that's by just going back and challenging those limits, and people can begin to reflect on. And you have the right discipline in the room. They can sit down, look at the mitigations, draft an MOC, and you can now sign that MOC, which is a management of change process for you and the facility to make sure that you can put other mitigations to avoid any other risk that could materialize in the future. But where we stand in terms of optimization for brownfields, we can't just sit on opportunities because of the limits that we had set, at the FDP point or the initial design of the field. We challenge it. In some instances, we are successful. In some instances, we are not successful because of some of the risks that have been, that have been envisaged, could be real and genuine risks, and there are no mitigations in place. Then we can now say, okay, yes, we can go ahead. However, what I'm trying to pitch is, let us challenge those limits, and in some instances, you'll be able to push those limits, and it gives you some incremental production. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Yep.
So the key message is challenge the limits. It might be successful, it might not be. It's doing while you're challenging it that you evaluate the risks, coming, the risks associated with each of those limits. Do you have mitigation plans in place for them? And if not, you can drop that. Otherwise, there might be an opportunity that is untapped. Okay, thank you so much. All right, so the next question is, can you talk a bit more on how high GOR affects production performance?
Yeah, so this is a very big subject, and it also has connotations as to what is applicable. Where I work, or where I work at the moment, flare is a no-no, right? So is adherence to the GHG emissions targets, right? So flaring is not allowed. In some climes, you can afford to flare. In Nigeria, there's strong flare limits. But I also know there are waivers, for flaring, across the industry. So it depends on regulation. It depends on where you are. In the Niger Delta, it may not be an imminent problem, but I think looking at the climate change dimension of things and all of that, it may be a challenge in the future. And indeed, how does it affect production performance? If you have to cut down your flaring because you don't have ways of managing the gas, then obviously it's going to affect your production. That's just one part of it. If you are hearing there are some companies, IOCs, that are here to flare limits, in that case, they need to now find a way to cream the wells, right, to be able to get more. So in that context, you now begin to see that high GOR can actually play a part in your production management. And that's why the limit diagram is very key. If you look at your flare limits, it's also part of your limit diagram. And you have a flare of maybe 2 million scoff per day, assuming, or 1 million scoff per day, or even zero flare, that begins to influence how much your limit diagram is evolving over the time, respecting the forecast of each of the wells. So that's how it affects your production performance. So it's building in all the constraints on your flaring, building on the constraints on at the end user side that can actually influence how much you produce, how you produce your wells. It could also mean that you have a compressor that is limited in capacity, right? If your compressor, your surface equipment is also limited in managing the gas, your limit diagram tells you For you to sustain production, you need to go lower on your gas. So that's why hydro plays a key role. I'm not going to go, on the subsurface side. There's a lot of context around it in terms of recovery. You're losing the energy of the reservoir. In some instances, it can actually be a good thing as well in terms of lifting your oil to surface, right? So that's a good thing for you. But you need to find how you manage the resources. Gas is and I know cooking gas is very expensive now. Even the LNG gas is very expensive. So there's value in actually tapping into the gas, and that's why you need to also watch how your GOR is evolving by looking at the limit diagram and beginning to put in your constraints and know where it begins to hurt you in terms of your production, right? If your company is more around the oil production and not on the gas production side.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. So we still have a couple of questions, but due to time limit, we might just have to pick some of them.
Yeah.
And then the ones that we are not able to attend to right here on the call, then we'll just collate them and send to you. And then once you have a response, we'll share that via SPE. All right. So and then the next question, and I'm also particularly interested in this question too. And I think this has to do with deriving value from the observation of some of these brown assets. But then given the fact that we listed some of the challenges that we have in Niger Delta, how do we derive that value? So the question is, considering the security challenges in Niger Delta, how can we better manage certain optimization solutions that require us to deploy sensitive equipment on the field close to the wellhead or on the wellhead? Because for you to deploy some of these equipment.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I completely agree with you. And I think it's an area, and that's why I put it as, pitching trying to push the limit. We need to think about it, right? I know there are constraints, but we have control panels on the wellheads. Some of them are stolen, some of them are not stolen. There are areas where we have prone, areas where we see, high potential for theft and vandalization and all of that. But indeed, there are areas where obviously you have a very cozy relationship with your community and you don't have some of those challenges. So why don't you explore the opportunity of using transmitters, for instance, right? It's not across the whole Niger Delta that we see a lot of those vandalization. There are areas where you still see some relative calm, where you can actually deploy some sensitive equipment that you can actually use for monitoring. A couple of them that we use here, they are based on RF, radio frequency, and we can pick up data from the wellhead, right? Just by connecting both ends, to radio frequency, they can tap to it over long or medium range distances, right? There are other instances where you may need to have a solar panel that can help you transmit data from the wellhead, right? So I just want to put that thing out there so that people can begin to think of it and see the value. If I can save 10% of my total production for my company, that amounts to a lot of production. And what we don't reflect on is if I save 1,000 barrels of oil per day by just going after these wells that are tripping without we knowing, that means $75,000 per day. And you do that times 30 days, you're already at $400,000 $400,000 per month, right? That's a lot of resources.
A lot of money.
There's no transmitter in the market that will cost up to 400,000. That whole system does not cost up to 400,000. So it's for us to begin to think about it and see how can we have that as a solution space for us to quickly respond, to the wells or begin to integrate that. I know some assets have benefit of Pi data tied to DCS. Indeed, they can use that for the monitoring. But I also want to challenge that there are some assets or some fields that have the opportunity to deploy it. And then I think it's a no-brainer. It's actually a good opportunity to go after. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And of course, even assets that have a much more lower footprint, and they've also covered, they also have very good security presence in that asset. These are opportunities that they can actually, start leveraging. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Nyekan. So we'll just take one more question. Sorry, we are out of time. The rest of the questions, like we mentioned, then we'll respond to them later and send the answers to SPE to share with us. So one more question. So for this question, I wanted to combine it a bit. So it still has to do with case study 2. It's a bit of case study 2 and the case study on a bulk line.
Yeah, okay.
bulk lab, so I'll just combine it. So when optimizing dual zone production using a single string, although the second question too, you're also producing from you're also commingling production from two different reservoirs to a single flow line. You know,
Right.
what strategies employed to prevent higher pressure zone from limiting production from the lower pressure zone, because you have to deal with that particular issue. And then what are the potential consequences of back pressure, you know, on production, especially since you're, so that's why I'm combining the two case studies, case study 2 and case study 4.
Okay. So for me, 2 is very easy and straightforward, right? Because it's the same pressure, the same well.
Yeah.
It's just going through 2 different strings, right? So you don't have any back pressure effects on that case. In that case, the only thing you might begin to worry about is what flow regime will you be expecting from both of them, and that you can always manage with your choke at surface to optimize in terms of the flow regime, because you don't want your well to be slugging, right? So you need to find a way to manage. Good enough if you have good energy, you can see flow from the 2 strings and you're fine, right? Cumulatively, what we are looking at is what you're going to get from the 2 strings would give you something higher than what you're going to get from just having 1 string. So you have the other string that is not doing anything, you can take advantage of it and you get it to produce. So in that case, no back pressure. What you have there is just production from the 2 strings, same reservoir, same molecule going to surface, but you're having incremental volume because you're opening the other string. On the other case study 4, I'm really keen on that because that also was one of the key things that we put into consideration in managing case study 4. And if you go back to that slide, I tried to put in, because of obviously presentation, not want to put a lot of details, but one of the things that we use is the network model, which is the IPSM. And in that case, we're able to bring in two of the zones and then begin to test what's the impact of one zone on the other. Or sometimes the impact may not materialize in the short term. We need to build in the future bit as well by running prediction. But however, you have a mitigation, of us being able to manage that space. If you look at that diagram, you go to that slide 4. I just want to just show something very quickly. If you go to that slide 4, you see that the bulk line that we're actually optimizing is downstream of the wellhead of the 2 wells, right? So the 2 wells, you have a short length of line that comes from the 2 wells. Case study 4, I think that's the slide. So we have
that's on slide 11.
Slide 11, I think, yeah. So you have the 2 flow from exactly. So this is the picture, right? So the optimization is I have a small length of flow line that comes from the 2 strings, long string and short string. And that short length, you see, you have the choke on each of the strings. So with the choke, what you're trying to manage is the pressure downstream of the choke. If you model your well and you see that if you put the choke 30, 32, 33, it changes your flow line pressure immediately after the choke. That's how you're able to determine your choke, because obviously you want to maintain sonic velocity across the choke so that you don't have interferences from downstream affecting your upstream, right? So once you put a choke across it, you're able to now determine what's your flow line pressure immediately after the choke. What you intend to do in this solution space is to make sure that your flow line pressure between the 2 strings are within the same regime. Roughly 5% difference is still okay. You're going to get bulk production across it. You may not be able to derive 100% of the production from each of the strings all put together in total. Like for instance, 2 of the strings were doing roughly 2,300, 2,200, 4, 5, right? But we ended up with 3,900 as a bulk production from there. And indeed, this gives you value if you look at it in terms of the cost over the benefit. Because now you have a single line, you can always flow the well, and you can actually optimize even more by knowing which well is giving you more liquid or more oil than water. And you can use your choke to actually vary which well gives you more production at the end of the day. So this was a clear example of saving costs in the short term and managing in a longer period by also looking at the IPSM model to actually test the scenarios on different flow line sizes to see how you're able to reduce that back pressure effects. So indeed, like you said, back pressure is a key concern in this case because you can actually choke back one of the zones. However, you have the choke that can help you to manage that, right? To manage that outflow so that you're able to sustain production evenly across the bulk line. And that's the same principle that we use in bulking anyway, because there are facilities that we are bulking. There's always a header line, and there are different wells that come in with different flow lines. The whole essence of bulking is that you want to maintain the same regime. But once one well is higher than the other regime, you find a way to choke. If you cannot choke, then you take it to a separate regime, a separate line, right? So, but in this context of what we did was to actually find that sweet spot between the long and the short string, so that two of them can flow amicably, easy across that bulk line, and we're able to get the production at the end of the day. And this was a clear example. In fact, there's an SP paper that was published. I don't have the full detail. I know it was published in the last 2 SPs, right, on this initiatives, and I just want to leave it at that, yeah. But I think I can, if maybe in the course of the answering of the question, I'll try and pick up the SP paper number so that I can send out, so that we can begin to reflect on that opportunity and see that yes, indeed, there's a lot of value in doing that. And you can actually look at this in the context of you still have wells in your facility or in your field where you still have long and short string having different lines. And if one of the lines goes out because of vandalization or because of red banded or integrity, this is an opportunity to think about, to see, can I look at the pressure regime? Is this something I can do a short fix, just a short length of line at the wellhead, and flow the well through the remaining line that is there to the well? So there's an opportunity for this, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think the key goal is always look for low cost, opportunities to explore from there, low hanging fruits to explore from there. So thank you so much, Mr. Nyekan. Thank you to everybody for the questions and for the engagement. And then at this point, I'll hand over to you, TIC. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Ebuka, and thank you, Nyekan. It's obvious that we can spend the rest of the evening here if we allow both of you and also our audience. You can. There's a lot of interest and a lot of, because WRFM is so wide and it's so far-reaching. We can discuss from the reservoir to the facility. There's so much to talk about. So thank you very much. And I mean, we must appreciate both of you. You have delivered on your duties, both as speakers and moderator. Excellently done. So thank you again for taking the time, and thank you for sharing your experience. Okay, so we'll just quickly go to the next thing on the agenda, which I believe is to present certificates of appreciation to you. So this is really just to recognize you for volunteering and for taking the time to contribute to our technical knowledge base in SP Port Harcourt. So I'll hand over to Essie to just do the presentation. If you're there, Essie.
Yes, I am, but as the Erasmus is here, so I want him to do that on our behalf.
All right, as the Erasmus, over to you, please.
Okay, I feel very, very privileged to making this presentation to our very own Nyekan Obot. And it's been a while I saw his face. And it's been a lot of excitement for me seeing him present this. And I think for me, this is a discussion I can listen to all day, right? Looking for production at no cost. And the way I like to talk about this topic is, first of all, then the assets will ask you, what can I do? What can you do to improve production without we having to spend, right? So you normally will start from zero cost. Then before you build it into a request activity and then maybe rig and then new developments. So what Aneka has really focused on is one key area that is very important for supporting our base production. So Aneka, we appreciate you. I know it's very late in Brunei at the moment. I think it's already like 1 or 2 in the morning. So it's really very late. So we it's 2 a.m. exactly. 2 a.m. So we appreciate you. This certificate is proudly presented to Nyekan Obot for your invaluable contribution as a speaker for the 2024 November monthly technical meeting of SP Port Harcourt on the topic production optimization in the Niger Delta fields, challenges and opportunities. I think what Nyekan has demonstrated is giving back. Yeah, imagine how far away he is, and then he found the time despite it not being so convenient, as I just mentioned about the time, he has done excellently. And I'm sure if you give him a whole 1 hour or even more, he'll continue speaking on this topic. So Anyeka, we appreciate you in SP Port Harcourt. Thank you very much, and keep up the good work. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I need to also commend everyone
Yeah.
for staying put. And then one more thing, Erasmus. Just to mention that Erasmus is one professional that has impacted my career over the period. 15 years is a lot of years, but indeed with Erasmus, I learned a lot in that journey. And I just want to mention it here that Erasmus has been a technical coach to myself and to a lot of the younger engineers, in Shell and even outside Shell. So thanks, and really appreciate. Thanks for the recognition.
Thank you. Simeon, please, the next. So we're also presenting to the moderator, SD Erasmus. It's still on you. Erasmus, if you can hear us, please could you unmute and present the certificate of appreciation to our moderator.
Okay, to our moderator, right? Hey, Ebuka, are you there? Yeah. Sorry, I think
Yes, sir,
I have to be showing my face. Okay. Thanks for the excellent moderation, Ebuka. I think the role of the moderator is to kind of sure the message is passed, is broken down to the audience to make sure that there's a good flow in the session. And I think you've done that very well already. We appreciate you. This certificate is proudly presented to Ebuka Afuama for your invaluable contribution as a moderator for 2024 November monthly technical meeting on the topic Russian optimization in Niger Delta brownfield challenges and opportunities. And I think I feel so proud too that someone like Ebuka, who only yesterday was doing IT close by, is someone that can so moderate a session excellently like this. So Ebuka, you appreciated. Thank you for finding time to render this what do you call it, voluntary service to SP Port Harcourt. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Erasmus. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks to SP 103. Special thanks to
All right.
Anyeka for making the moderation easy. Thank you. Ella, back to you.
Yeah, I see. I don't know if we've lost her. Hello.
Hey, I can't see her on the call, probably network.
Okay. Before she comes on board, I was looking at the picture of Anyeka and Ebuka. I'm sure if you take Ebuka's glasses and give to Anyeka, they will pass for each other. I'm not surprised that the flow was effortless between both of you. So maybe we should organize one where Anyeka will moderate Ebuka. That's fair.
That would be bad.
So I think while we may have lost, I will say a very big thank you to all of you. This is SP Port Harcourt session. We rarely miss the monthly technical meeting because We always want to learn, given our number. We are a strong fold of over 1,000 persons. Those of you who are just coming and you want to be part of the SPA, you can reach us, you can reach the TIC, you can reach me, you can reach Erasmus, any member, and come join our section. We are also open to those who want to come and share their experience. The last session was given to someone who volunteered, and the presentation was so deep. I begged him to prepare a course for NICE. I'm hoping he does it so we can push it through. This is another deep lesson I've gotten myself. I was doing excellently well in production technology, only for me to get into the industry and found myself in wealth. Something I thought I hated, I succeeded in it. But Ebuka has made me to feel that perhaps I should just be opening and closing wells as well. And I'm sure I would have done far better. But all that said and done, there is division of labor. I want to say thank you to everyone who made it here today. The day is well spent. We've spent about 1.5 hours. I recognize all the board members here, the section directors who had come. So I will say, well done, thank you. And after the photograph, we can take our leave for those of us who are left here. Simon, photograph, we go. Most people are already gone.
Thank you, SC.
Okay,
And just to appreciate everyone on the call for staying till the end of the program. So Simeon, please just take the pictures while we're coming on camera. Just also to remind us, as I think SC has mentioned already, if you are not a member yet, if you need to renew your membership, you can reach out to any of the board members and follow us on all our social media pages so you can stay in touch and stay ahead with all our programs. SP week is coming up from next week, so I hope you have that in the calendar. The dinner and awards night is next weekend, so do have that in your calendar and come and have some fun on SC's head. Okay.
Okay, so let's just snap our pictures for those whose videos are on. So let's just give the thumbs up. As if I say SP, you just say cleaner energy. SPE, cleaner energy.
Cleaner energy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night and good morning,
Ella,
Aneka.
Ella, please. Ella, Ella,
Yes.
I wanted to just say something. I sent
Yes, we can hear you.